Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Eden. So this start was very good and this run was, I would say, very weird. And I don't know really what went wrong or what went right. I just feel like for some reason I did everything that I usually do in a daily run and somehow I just ended up ranking first, at least in the very first 4 hours. I don't know if it's gonna change in the future because obviously I cannot see the future, but at the time of the recording I was still ranked first and I have no idea how it happened. Like, I wish I could tell you, oh, it's because I made this decision, because I broke the game this way, and because I used the clicker or something, but I genuinely can't tell you what made me rank so well. I feel like I've played like I play any other single daily, but for some reason the things kind of aligned in just the right way, and that ended up giving me a really good spot in the end. But even with that said, I just cannot fathom seeing myself being in such a good spot, because I don't feel like I did anything. Maybe, I dodged a little bit better than usual, but I don't think that warrants the very first spot. There are players who play the daily and basically never get hit and still find a way to break the game. Like, they take hours and hours every single day to really get the best score possible, and those people know how to break the game and get a good score. And I'm just here just basically doing my thing, and somehow I ended up in the first place for no reason. And I don't know, I guess I shouldn't be complaining at this point. It's definitely a good thing, but I definitely would like to explore some of the possibilities of what went right and what went wrong. Obviously, I do expect to drop towards the end because, better players will play, someone will find a lucky break or something like that. So I don't expect to be in the first place for the entirety of the day or the entirety of the daily, but I definitely think it's something worth exploring. And I think the very first part here is we got 2 very RNG-oriented items just at the start. Of course, as Eden, you always can rely to just get some RNG items, and the stats were actually really good. We had 4.5 damage and 8 tear delay, so that's both very good stats just to kind of deal with those first floors, but we also had Purity and Undefined. And first of all, Purity, I think that's the most obvious of the 2 items. And Purity is one of those things which I feel like can either be really good or it can be really, really frustrating. Because it has 4 random stat upgrades. It's not random, but essentially every time you take damage, you reroll into a different stat upgrade when you enter the next room. And those 4 can be either range, speed, damage, and tears. And obviously you either want damage and tears because the other 2 are useless. And in the early game you would prefer to have damage because that will get stacked on top of it, because you just get something like 5 damage on top. So if you have a little damage, it's going to be much more helpful than tears. And later on in the game you want a higher tear rate because it's assumed that you already have at least some damage stat, and it's just gonna be much better because it's gonna stack with every single one of your tiers and just gonna be able to shoot faster. So getting one or the other is gonna be generally good, but of course early on it all depends. Do you get that damage upgrade? Can you 1 or 2 shot most enemies as you actually enter the room? And I feel like just depending on that, just in which places you got hit, that might influence just the overall feeling of the run, because I didn't get hit a lot of times. I think I only got hit once, and I was lucky enough to reroll the red damage stat upgrade, and I was kind of reliant on that for the majority of like the first 3 floors. But I would imagine if you maybe walked into a random enemy, maybe if the enemy just kind of damages you in a way you can't really predict, you would lose that damage upgrade and you would be left in a much worse spot than I was, and for that reason that can really influence, of course, the speed of your run, just how far you're going, and also just the overall, I would say, like, how patient you are. And of course, at some point, if you feel like you get hit a lot, maybe you try to reroll for a very good Purity boost, and for some reason that damage upgrade just never comes. It can tilt you a little bit, and I feel like for that reason, because maybe you get a little bit frustrated, the entirety of the run can feel like it's actually worse than it factually is. But of course, as the run goes on and kind of was going on to an extent, I was kind of looking back on it, and I was just thinking, the Purity is definitely something that can help a run early on, but I don't think it's enough to really warrant saying, well, this is a good run or this is a bad run. Even though the stats and the damage upgrades are very, I would say, influential and very big, they can really define the shape of just in which directions you go. It's not something that I would say, well, this is not the difference between why I ranked first and why I didn't. So I feel the other part of the equation here is definitely undefined. And I stuck with undefined because, first of all, I wanted to use this item. Sometimes I just have like a crazy theory or like a crazy experimentation in my head, and I just say, okay, I'm not going to pick up any of the other active items even though I think they're better. So we had the Book of Shadows, we had Compost, we had the Satanic Bible, and I just stuck with undefined because I felt like I want to use this item to the greatest of its ability. I want to go to every single I am error room, and I just want to get basically as many points as I possibly can. So I stuck with it, and it proved to be very useful because I also got the battery charge, and it allowed me not only to teleport out of boss rush and explore the entirety rest of the mount floor, But it was also useful in some cases where I entered the curse room and then I teleported out, or sometimes maybe it helped me find a second secret room or a secret room, and of course I was able to get to those I am error rooms sometimes, which also just kind of, not only did they give me a few good items like infamy, but it also kind of boosted my score for exploration bonus. So I feel like overall it was the right idea to stuck with Undefined, and it definitely wasn't as influential as it could have been. Like, I definitely seen Undefined do more work than on this particular run. But I think it really depends, because I think the floor, and not just the floor, but just like the things that happen in the run change depending on when you use Undefined and when you go to the I am error room. Maybe you go to the I am error room and there's like an item in there, and because you saw that item, it can change the outcome of which item you get later on in the run. Maybe it can change which items you get when you open up a golden chest or anything like that. Essentially, I'm not really sure how it works, and I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I feel like Undefined is one of those rare items which aren't really seeded to an extent, and of course I think the outcome of what this item gives you and just maybe which items are generated changes depending on, of course, which other items you see, but also in which positions you use the Undefined. So I feel like that's one of the unaccounted factors that really made a difference in just maybe if people found the AWS rune, if they found good items, or if they were stuck in a position where they thought it was a bad run. And you can see this run at this point, and you might saying, you know, this is not a bad run. It's a really strong run, and I just can't see it going any other way, essentially. I guess the only thing I can understand, like the main difference here being, is if people didn't go to the map, and of course they went to boss rush, and because of that they weren't really able to explore the entirety of the floor. There was a challenge room, and the challenge room had the sack of sacks and also Cricket's head, and obviously both of these items are going to be what really boosts your not only DPS but also just how much swag bonus you get and things like that. And if you don't have a way to go out, and I would imagine most people would replace Undefined with something like Book of Shadows, then you're not going to find either of those two items. That can really kind of put a damper on things. And I guess when you look at it, most of my damage upgrades, it doesn't only come from the Cricket's head, but also because I used the Black Rune twice, actually 3 times I think, to suck up 3 different items, and I think 2 of those actually gave me a damage upgrade. So for all of those reasons, I feel like I made some of those decisions which I usually, not that I wouldn't make them, but I just kind of usually wouldn't bother, like using the Black Rune, but it turned out to be, in this case, the right choice, and I think it definitely kind of helped the shape of the run. And not only did I have a great time, and it was just a really powerful run on its own, but with Chocolate Milk, I was pretty much 1 or 2 shotting most enemies. And because I was able to explore, because I had Undefined, I was able to kind of teleport around, I was able to go to the second secret rooms, I was able to find the AWS rune, which then allowed me, of course, to go to Shoal, and sadly, there wasn't a sacrifice rune, but for that very reason, I did pick up Cancer, because with how Cancer works, first hit is gonna be a full heart of damage, but every subsequent hit is only gonna be a half of a heart of damage, which means you're just gonna take much less damage penalty overall. So I feel like I had every single piece to really kind of buzz this one wide open, but because the sacrifice rune didn't come, I really didn't feel like I utilized it to the fullest potential, and I definitely didn't feel like the run was as good as the end score might indicate it was, but with that said, we did get 99 of every consumable, which was maybe a bit of a stroke of luck. We did use Undefined to go to those pesky secret rooms and I am error rooms, which kind of also I think gave us a boost. We played pretty well, so our damage penalty wasn't too high, so I feel like for all of those reasons kind of combined, we did end up ranking in a really good spot, and like I said, I don't think I can complain too much, but it was definitely one of those runs which I found very enjoyable. I think it was a bit cerebral, and it does depend on just maybe which decisions you make throughout the run that can really kind of shape the outcome. And to some extent I enjoy that, but obviously I do sympathize with all of those people who maybe didn't find these items and had a bit of a worse time. But with that said, I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.